Hey guys, Technomentor here with the video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the iPhone 6s Plus in 2021 and if it's still worth the phone to buy in 2021. We're going to take a look at the hardware, the software, the features about this phone and overall performance on iOS 14 and what can you expect if you're looking to buy iPhone 6s Plus or still using iPhone 6s Plus, and what can you expect while you're using it compared to some of the newer iPhones, of course. But before we go ahead and get started, if you guys are new to the channel, we do a lot of tech news, reviews, and giveaway, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. So let's talk about the iPhone 6s Plus. Well, the iPhone 6s Plus, it's been well over 5.5 years, almost close to 6 years since it's debuted in 2015 with one of the flagship phones from Apple, and a lot of great things has happened since then. But the iPhone 6s Plus, as you can see, has stole that vintage design to it, that full body size. It's much bigger than its predecessors of iPhone 5. It's when Apple started to go ahead and make the iPhone bigger, which seems to be like a futuristic feature of the iPhone 6s Plus, as a lot of companies are moving towards bigger screen, bigger display and such, and that's where the 6s Plus comes in. It's the bigger size of the iPhone 6 and the 6s, which are the smaller edition of it. As you know, there's also a 6 Plus, but this is the 6s Plus, and the way to know this is the 6s Plus is if you look in the back, you'll notice that the 6s Plus has this S logo, and the regular 6 Plus does not have that S on it. So that's a quick way to determine if you have a 6s Plus or iPhone 6 Plus. And if we look at the back here, as you can see here, it has that aluminum body to it. This is the silver edition of it, and the phone comes in multitude of colors. You have your silver, your space gray, and of course your space gray, and then you have the gold one. Along with the gold one, there's also a special edition of the rose gold one, which as you can see we don't have here, but this is a silver edition of it. So you have 4 different color choices to pick from. And then if you talk about the other pieces on the phone, is the storage capacity that the iPhone 6s Plus comes in. It comes in a couple different storage configuration. Of course, the base model comes at 16 gig, which seems to be like the debut of it. And you're also able to get it at 32 gig and the max capacity 128 gig, which is the new base for the iPhone 12 lineup. So if you really look at the storage, it doesn't seem a lot back in 2015. Well, that used to be sort of what the max Apple devices could have, around 128 gig, and a lot has changed since then. And we talk about the hardware of this phone. One thing we want to talk about is the chip on this phone. So this phone does have a A9 chip compared to the newer phones that went up to A14, so almost 5 generations since the chip debuted on this phone. And also internal thing that Apple doesn't expose, that it has 2 gig of RAM, something really important if you do a lot of intensive multitasking or gaming. 2 gig doesn't seem a lot for the RAM that's built into this phone. And the other thing we want to talk about is the battery life on these phones. The battery on this phone has around a 2750 mAh battery. And what does that battery mean? Well, if you talk about battery, one thing you're going to talk about is the video playback, and the video playback on this phone is about 14 hours compared to the newer phone, which if you compare the newer phones right now in the market, you'll probably be comparing the 6s Plus with the Apple 12 Pro Maxes. The Maxes are the equivalent. Apple has moved away from using the plus size in their naming of the phone to the Max, which starting with the iPhone XS Max, that's what they have moved into. You don't hear the plus size notation anymore. And let's talk about the body of the phone. We briefly touched it. As you can see here, the body, if you look closely, it is the aluminum body to it compared to the glass back body that the newer phones have. It has that design where you have the side buttons here. You have also noticeable hardware is that 3.5 millimeter headphone jack with it. As you know, the 6s lineup was the last generation that the 3.5 millimeter audio jack was still available, and Apple has since moved away where now all of your audio is through the lightning port here, and there is no 3.5 millimeter audio jack, which in some cases might be a limitation. A lot of people sort of hate it, liked it, depending on you are, because of the headphones not being, sometimes you need dongles to charge and listen to music with your headphones. And as you can see here, the body here is a rounded body design to it, pretty unique in a lot of ways. The other thing you'll notice is that 12 megapixel single camera, and the iPhone 6s Plus did not have the double one like the iPhone 7 lineup and the 8 Plus lineup, where they started introducing the dual camera. The 6s Plus just has a single one, and then on the front camera here it has a 5 megapixel front facing camera, and a lot hasn't changed since the Apple released this one. Right now, even on the 12 Pro Max, they have about a 7 megapixel camera, which for FaceTime, things like that, it's where you probably notice the quality hasn't improved a lot in that area, but nonetheless it is, I think. And we talk about the camera a little bit. If we go ahead and talk about what kind of recording and such you can do, because it only has a single camera, you don't get features like the photography mode, which is available on the iPhone 8 Plus and above. You do still get to take some pretty unique pictures. You have take regular pictures in pano mode, square. And the other aspect about camera here that we want to talk about is the video of the phone camera. So you're able to take some pretty cool pictures on this phone with the HDR picture, but the video part, you're actually able to record at almost 4K here, and a little bit underneath what the newer phones can do. But if we look in the camera setting, you'll notice that the iPhone 6s Plus does allow you to record 4K at 30 frames per second, only one setting. In the newer phones, you'll see going from 720 all the way to 4K at 60 frames per second. So although it doesn't record quite the 60 frames per second, still can say some pretty good video on this phone. And now let's talk about the phone's overall performance and software on this phone. You'll notice that the iPhone 6s Plus does have iOS 14 installed here. That's why we have these bigger app icons that are now available and you can add onto this phone. And that's what's kind of the probably makes this phone still bit worth it in 2021, is that you still have the latest update in 2021. We don't know if that will be the case in later this year though, when Apple releases iOS 15, because the 6s lineup or the last generation of phones that were able to get it, because the 6 didn't get the iOS 13 update, we suspect Apple will not be supporting this phone anymore. And that's where things like your app support, you start losing support for some of the apps. Some of the apps start not being able to download to the phone because it doesn't have the latest iOS. So expect this phone will not be getting the next major update on it. But right now, because it has iOS 14, the thing about it is that even after the major updates are done or so on the phone, you still get another 2 to 3 years of most of the popular apps still working on this phone. And that's why this phone is still probably great for things like, your regular day-to-day stuff, whether if you're using it to call or if you're using it to do just simpler stuff like texting and calling. That thing, Apple phones are really phenomenal for that features. Even light browsing on these phones, as you see, even on a decent Wi-Fi connection here, browsing still, it's a little lag. It does a little lag compared to newer phones if you have used one of the newer phones, but still, nonetheless, this gets the job done. You're able to browse, as you see here, as you're clicking through browsing here, works for the most part pretty well. All of your social media apps and such here will work. Your gaming app, as you can see, those things are not impacted because iOS 14 is still running. The thing about the iPhone 6s Plus that we really like is that bigger display that you have compared to the 6 lineup. Of course, the bigger body allows that to give you that bigger display, that 5.5 all diagonal LCD IPS technology in it with that 1920 by 1080 pixel display here that we get. It's pretty huge display. It does have 3D touch to it, and the max brightness on this phone that you're able to get on it is around 500 nit compared to the newer phones, which have almost 1200 nit all of it. Because this is the older generation of phones compared to the newer ones where you have OLED on it, this is an LCD display. Things might not look as crisp as the OLED ones, but with the OLED newer phones, you're paying almost $1,000 and higher. Because this one still does have a big display, things like watching Netflix, YouTube, all of that stuff, you're still able to do pretty well, no doubt about it. It still supports those features. And the thing we like about this phone is its ability to really just run any sort of apps that we want, whether you play games. Most of the gaming space, you're going to be looking to do light gaming. This phone still gets the job done. Anyone that's not a heavy gamer, if you're playing games that are really graphic heavy and more meant to be played on a console like PUBG or like Call of Duty, or things that aren't really meant to be for a phone of this because it only has 2 gig of RAM, you might be looking for another phone besides the 6S Plus, as those things would not be supported. And there you guys have it for this phone's review of the software hardware. It does get iOS 14 update. All of the specs that we talk about, or it's been some time since a lot of the specs need a refresh. And kind of to answer the question, is the iPhone 6S Plus worth it in 2021? We say, well, a couple things you want to look at. If you're looking for a phone that'll get you through most of the day, if you're a light to medium user or that's looking for just a simple phone, but still one that supported device this year in 2021, iPhone 6S Plus is a budget-friendly phone and it will get those things done for you. So it's still worth it for that. But it might not be worth it if you're looking for a phone to use for a couple more years. You're looking for a better camera, better display, getting more features and more speed out of it. The iPhone 6S Plus will probably not be a good choice for you, and you might be considering maybe a 8 Plus or even a 10S Max, something maybe not paying the full price. But this phone pretty much coming towards the end of its life, and it's at the last phase of it before it goes to being not worth it. But slightly couple of reasons for it to be still a phone that's worth it in 2021. So hopefully this video is helpful for when you're looking to buy one of the phones like the iPhone 6S Plus in 2021 and really want to know everything about it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.